Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is Monday, February the 6th. This is our discussion meeting. Just go straight into the business. It's a discussion on renewal of the BDC contract, and that will be Commissioner John Irwin. Turn it over to John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The reason why I requested this work session is so that we could give the background, especially to our new commissioners, and started cussing and discussing concerning the future of the BDC. As you're well aware, I requested that you be given a copy of the documents that were provided by the BDC in answer to the questions, and I will go down on that in order. Now, this contract is going to be up for renewal on 1 October of 2023, which presents a number of questions. Do we renew the contract? If we don't renew the contract, is the county manager willing to assume that responsibility? Does he have plans? The BDC is an investment that was made, if memory serves me correct, in 2011 to the tune of $1.765 million. Now, that did not include the library, and if I remember correctly, the library is in excess of $300,000 whenever we converted it. So we are looking at a property that has a $2 billion plus investment by the county. Originally, it was scheduled to be a call center, and I believe that is why Golden Leaf gave us the money to bring in the military-grade fiber optic system that is in that area right now. Now, we turned that over. That's being utilized by a number of companies, judging by the number of locks that are on that gate. So let's look at what we have by the information that was provided to us. I requested a list of tenants and how long they've been there. Now, whenever we went from call center to a business development center, it is my understanding, looking at the bylaws, that this was to be a seed operation for new businesses. If a business was starting up, the rent would be reduced, and they would be given an opportunity to have office space where basically what they needed to provide was telephone service if they wanted it. Of course, in this day and age, not many people use landlines. We're beginning to use cell phones. That is a function because whenever this was set up, a BDC Business Development Center 501c3 was set up, and a contract was made with them to run the BDC or the building. Now, as a 501c3 corporation, they run it the way they want to because we signed it over. Contract stipulates that they will do that, and we will provide them $10,000 a year, but there were certain functions that they needed to provide, one of which was business development, but we'll get into that later. So going by the documents, if you will look, in response to my request for the tenants and length of time and the rent, you will see how many tenants are there, those that are being charged, and the amount of rent. Now, one thing that I would like to call your attention to is the Alleghany TV. Alleghany TV is occupying 4 rooms, 302, 303, 304, and 400. That is $50 a room. Alleghany County TV, if memory serves me correct, please correct me if I'm wrong, County Manager. That is it provides our PEG channels, that is public, education, and government channels on Alleghany Community TV. The state of North Carolina provides us $90,000 to do that. Roughly 90? Am
Roughly
I
90.
close? All right, so we get $90,000 to do that, and they're paying $200 of rent. Look at, I said it'd be minutes from September 20. Notice that we had a grant to the Chamber of Economic Development in the amount of $25,000, and the statement behind that is would be a minimum. So by going over, they're going to give them $25,000 to do the economic development according to the minutes. That's pretty good. County gives the chamber $50,000. County gives them, I believe, $20,000. TDA gives them in excess of $30,000. And now the BDC is going to give them in excess of $25,000. Next information providing is the BDC conference room. Now, this is in the requirement where they were to conduct and assist new businesses get started and make available for outside agencies. There were 323 events, if my count is correct. 93 of those events were by Wilkes Community College. 23 events were by the Arts Council. Now, the areas, the people that are using this conference room are the Ministerium, just to give you an example. It's a meeting place for Alleghany TV, the Historical Society, Rotary Theater, Waiting Room, Education Foundation, App Health, and Atrium as a waiting room. That is in line with the contract. And excess of 2,000 people were in attendance, 2,564. That is something that the county can provide if we decide we are not going to renew that contract. The interesting part that I found, I asked for proof of insurance. They do have proof of insurance. That's also in the contract. I'd like to direct your attention to the Form 990. Form 990, as I've said many times, is basically it is a tax return for a for a 501c3 or a nonprofit. It is open to the public. Now, the BDC does not generate enough funds to do a full Form 990, so they do what is known as a Form 990 EZ, which does provide some information. Information I'd like to call your attention to is on the back of page 2. Cash, savings, and investment, money in the bank, $157,236. That means that somewhere there is money. If you will look at your members, list of officers, directors, and trustees, you will find that there are dual-hatted individuals on there that are members of the Chamber of Economic Development and also the BDC. Nothing wrong with that. If you will go to the Schedule A on the back, page 2, the value of services or facilities furnished by a government unit to the organization without charge. The equivalent in 2021 of $69,034. Now, that's an accounting scheme that I will not go into because, frankly, I'm not smart enough. Assume that by us giving them this contract and allowing them to perform their duties, they estimated $69,000. That is all the documents that I would like to refer you to right now. I just wanted to point out that information. I feel that it would be better for us to look at the information and discuss amongst ourselves whether we would like to renew the contract. But before we do that, if we are going to not renew the contract and assume control of the BDC, I think it would be fair to ask the county manager his thoughts. Can you manage it? Did you like that $172,000 or a little more money coming in a year?
Let's see, can I ask, John, I'd like to ask a question. What's your end game? What are you looking for?
Well,
are you alleging any misdoing?
No. Everything is above board. What I am looking at to fulfill my fiduciary responsibilities to the citizens of Alleghany County is is this money well spent? We have invested over $2 million in a facility. Right now, we have the Department of Social Services that we are paying $69,000 a year for a building.
49.
49,000. 63% of that is being reimbursed.
Will be this year.
This
It
year.
has been 50%.
It has been 50,
to this
so we've
point.
been paying 50-50. They are already looking to expand because they are anticipating that Medicare will be expanded. So that will be additional cost, and that will be at 50%, if I'm correct.
It's about another 4,600 square feet.
Another 4,600.
And the,
The minimum is 50%. The maximum can be in this 60.
but in this expansion portion for the first year, it would be a 50% reimbursement.
On the first year.
Yes, sir.
Then after that, it can increase.
It can.
Depends on the services they provide. And I believe, Michelle, you sit on both these boards.
I do.
The cost associated with that expansion, just using the same lease formula that they currently operate, is around $32,000. So if you figure a 50% reimbursement amount off of that for year one, that's what you're looking at, plus the 63% reimbursement off the current configuration of 49, basically 266 a year.
How are you tying DSS into your request for the
Well-
BDC information?
If we had used this building for DSS, we would not be paying those funds. We've got ample room in there to put offices of our government.
We also have a lease with DSS for
Yes.
another 5 years.
10.
No,
Now,
there's
that's-
5
that's-
years left on the lease.
What I am trying to show that this would have been a possibility. Now, the 10-year lease was in 2018, so that's not up until 2028. But we have other areas. Whenever we started looking, we looked at an area in the BDC in the room that was being occupied by the License Bureau that they had not utilized for over a year due to COVID. Whenever we looked at that for our dispatch area, it was perfect. We had ample room. We had the fiber optic that was coming in there.
I thought the security was the big reason it wasn't used.
No more security risks than what we've got right now. Look at the people that are coming through this building right now. But there's other areas. Or we could keep this. I'm not saying kick these people out in any stretch of the imagination. But we've got tenants that they have tenants, not us, because we're not running it. But there's tenants that's been in there for 6 years paying $150. Dr. Brent Arnold has built this building over here. He's got an office he can't rent because he can't compete. Marsha Wagner had the same problem with that little gym that was back there. What we do whenever we were young is a pool room. She couldn't rent it because she couldn't compete. Now, if the county agrees to do this, I'm not saying that suddenly we go out of sight and raise these people's rates. Gradually raise the rate of the rent until it is a market rent, because we are competing with our taxpayers out there right now, or right now the BDC is. There are occupants that are performing a service for Alleghany County that are not paying rent. I don't see why we shouldn't compete with that. But the idea that we've got to do, or the thing that I feel that this board should consider and talk about, one, do we renew the lease? If we're going to renew the lease and let them continue to run, what happens at I can't remember the exact amount, but $150,000, that's theirs. If that board wants to decide to go to Las Vegas for the weekend, spend the money, they could do it. It's 501c3, it's a corporation. We have no control over that. If we renew the contract, do we put some stipulation? Now, the one thing that I would, and I recommended this over a year ago,
I'll be right back.
I recommended this over a year ago, rewrite the contract, take out economic development. Remove that, and perhaps we put things in that rent be gradually increased until it is at the market rate for businesses that are over there. I cannot look at a taxpaying citizen in Alleghany County and say that here we are. We provided the building. We've done the modifications to it. We have given a contract. They're making money. They've got money in the bank in poor old Alleghany County. We aren't getting anything out of it. As a matter of fact, we're paying them $10,000 a year. Any major repairs coming out of the taxpayer's pocket. That roof came out of the taxpayer's pocket. If I remember correctly, we borrowed the money for it.
I say, instead of Mr. Chair, Miss Chair?
Mr.
Yeah.
Chair's back.
Miss Chair.
Chair is now back.
Mr. Chair. I do have some questions. It's for Brian, if you don't mind, Brian.
No.
I've got, I was just curious, because I'm trying to figure out this, again, trying to figure out like what's the best use of, the building that we have and stuff, but so right now is all the rental places, are they all full?
They are. Before we begin, if I can, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just open with a couple of remarks. One is, I think we ought to do some fact checking, Mr. Commissioner Chairman. I think some of the numbers that have been relayed out here, if you've been taking any notes, Greg, I saw you writing down numbers over there. I hope you fact check some of those numbers in terms of who's paid what and how many get paid. I might ask Commissioner Irwin, where did you get the idea that Charlie Scott was working for $12 an hour? Is that something he shared with you?
He shared it with me.
Can I share his W-2 with you? $42,000. Now, and that's a W-2. I can provide that. Now, you divide the 12.
Hey, that is Alleghany TV. That we're discussing the BDC.
We're discussing all of the items that you put on the
Just a
table.
minute, Brian, please. When one person asks a question, please let that person answer without having two people talk at the same time.
Thank you,
Continue,
Mr.
Brian.
Chairman. Now, I will say this, I am happy to answer the questions and be forthright, but if all of those numbers and all of those accusations that were thrown out here for you folks to hear and presumably to accept, then I feel a responsibility to say a lot of that is just incorrect. Now, if the commissioner or the chairman wants to, the manager wants to provide me with a list, I couldn't write down all of those numbers that were flying around, but the Charlie Scott one is one I can tell you. There was $172,000, Mr. Manager. He said, could you use that money? Last year, the rents on that building were less than $60,000. So I don't know where the other $110,000 comes from. Maybe Commissioner Irwin knows where that money is.
I may be able to shed that. I think, and I was just trying to highlight as he was going through the minutes, in the February 17th, 22 minutes, I believe, Commissioner Irwin, you correct me, but there is a reference of $173,102.03.
In the bank.
Yeah.
That's not an annual rental income, which is what he inferred.
And that's all I'm communicating
Right.
is
And all I was
that's where that
pointing out
number
was
came
the
from.
minute figures. I got the figures from what you provided to me.
Well, you didn't get from me that we get $172,000 in rent a year.
And I didn't state that. I said in the minutes and I read it from the minutes.
Mr. Chair, I got some more questions if I might.
Well, one other item was mentioned that
Let him
Dale
finish.
Cavaney.
Okay.
The Dale Cavaney was $20,000. The budget for Dale, and Dale resigned about this time last year. The last full year that he worked, less than $15,000. So I will just offer again, we can provide the W-2 for that as well. But I think it would be relevant for all of that list of money that's out there deserves some fact checking. Timmy, can I be glad to answer your question?
Okay, I was just okay, I've got there's no office space available now, correct? Or
There's a couple of spaces available. The office that Dale was using is currently available. We use it off and on as needed. There's a space that was just vacated within the last 30 days there where Sandra Busick was operating some therapy. It comes and goes, but I'm going to say, Timmy, we are 90+%
Okay.
fill at this point in time.
The other question is, I guess I seen in the paper some of these folks, which some of them is obvious, like the library and the Wilkes Community College was 5-6 years or whatever, but I guess, so you still have some renters that's going past 1, 2, 3 years.
There has never been and I think to that point, an incubator is somewhat of a misnomer. Now, that was a fairly common term that was passed around 10, 12, 15 years ago, doing incubators. I think if you will check around, there's very few of those facilities that were promoted as incubators at that time are operating on any incubator basis. And I got a specific one in Watauga County that was formed about the same time that the one in Alleghany was. They have permanent office space up there. The incubator concept should just not pan out in these rural areas. You don't have the turnover of entrepreneurial interest coming through, because if we dedicated that building to that purpose, we would be sitting up there with about a 25% occupancy or less. And the numbers that Commissioner Irwin's sharing with you about what the county puts into it would look a whole lot more bleak than what they look now. So over the years, it was determined that the best and highest use of that facility was to put those renters in there and generate the rent. Now, reference to the fair market value, most of those offices are about 150 square feet. So those folks, and they are charged $150 a month, $1,800 a year. That's $12 a square foot is what that works out to. Now, I think you check around, you'll find out that there's not any comparable office space available or very little. There may be 1 or 2 examples, but you're not going to find 25 offices where these people could relocate to and pay. And it doesn't matter about the rent. They're not available. Now, Commissioner Irwin used the example of Marcia Wagner's, the old pool room space. John, I'm familiar with that space. I don't know how you draw a comparison to that hole in the wall to any kind of space that's available at the BDC for any comparable purpose. There is no apples to apples comparison to that. And if you wanted to rent that, I'd be interested. When that was brought up as we were unfair competition, what's the rent that she wants for that space?
I never asked her.
Okay, well, good. That's, you really getting into the meat of it. If you're going to use that as an example to compare to the BDC and an unfair market situation, you ought to at least ask the question.
I got more questions. Okay, so if the county, say for instance, up here at the 90 South Main, if we run into a place that some of our offices, we needed office space for say, some department of it that we need, how is that, if they come in, if we needed a space, how would that be treated?
Well, right now, we just have to, we don't have space available to
Right.
accommodate that.
If you had space
Given
available.
now, what we did a few months ago and came to this board and actually talked about it, the NC Tech Pass looked like that was going to be taken off in Alleghany County, and we were concerned that we needed some space and maybe need to accommodate that for the growth of that. As that turned out, that program now is in Wilkes County, and it's working very. They actually purchased a building there, the Journal Patriot Building, downtown North Wilkesboro, have done a complete renovation of that space, and now it is occupied as a co-working space similar to some of what we're doing here at the BDC. There is still optimism that at some point in time, because this NC Tech Paths program is growing really well, and they want to expand it into Ash and Alleghany, so it could be that we will have a need for space for this NC Tech Path program. But specifically to your question, if the county had a requirement for space, we would absolutely entertain that. We would need to know how much space and what's needed, and how would we go about accommodating the county's needs for that. But that board over there certainly would give a priority. One other point back to that building was purchased in 2001. It was actually purchased with a $500,000 grant that came from EDA. And there were some stipulations on that money when it came. Now, the county did the renovations for the building, but the initial cost of that building when it was purchased from Troutman Shirt under the name of Sparta Leasing Company, the $500,000 came from, at that time, our representative senator who just retired, Richard Burr, was in the House, and Richard helped us secure that $500,000 EDA grant. So there were some stipulations about how the building had to be used. That's where the idea of the telecenter came up at that point in time. The telecenter idea never materialized. However, under the Business Development Center, we did operate a technical IT service there for a number of years, and that IT service served the county, the town, and the school system for about 4 years. And the library, yeah. So, and the folks who operated out of there were serving the entire school system of Alleghany County, elementary schools, high school, and central office. Brendan O'Neill, who is now currently employed by the school system, he was one of our technicians that worked there. Larry Thompson operates a business down in Galax. He worked there. But over time, as the school system needed their own dedicated people, the county now has their own dedicated IT person. So there was less need to have that service, and we have Tim, the tech man, who provides that service to residential and other businesses around town. So it's been an evolution. I mean, things have changed, and we have had to adapt as certain things changed and as the business climate changed. But I would say that those 25 offices plus or minus over there right now that are occupied, those folks, first of all, they come to town every day and operate their businesses. They eat meals downtown, they shop, they buy gas. So they are making a contribution to this community with what they do every day. Plus, there is a social and fellowship opportunity that's there for those folks. Some of them, most of them could work out of their home. If they did that, they would be at home working from the computer. They would not have that interaction to share with folks. So there is, I think, a community benefit to having the Business Development Center. Now, I would offer this. If there is a higher and best use for that facility, I would be right with Commissioner Irwin. I would support that 100%, and I think that's what you all ought to be looking at. I think it ought to be based on actual, factual numbers, put together what the real numbers are in terms of your cost to operate that center, what it's going to generate, and we will be happy to support you. And if the analysis is that it's more beneficial to the taxpayers and citizens of Alleghany County to use that for some other purpose, I would be the first one to applaud you for that.
Can you, I know they were talking about the utilities, that's confirmed that the BDC pays for utilities?
Utilities last year, that's another number I think that might be was total utilities included water, sewer, solid waste, internet, fax, and electric. The total was $21,000. It's a little bit different, I think, than the electric being whatever the number I heard.
So another thing I seen in one of the minutes were previous times, I think some tenant, actually there was a leak in the roof, and then there was a conversation in one of y'all's meetings that he was trying to figure out who should pay for that, and I think they'd mentioned about the county and then said, no, we'll try to help with that. But don't these tenants, according to the contract, they're supposed to have their own tenant insurance, correct?
They should, yes. In this case, it was less than $300 was the
Okay.
extent of the damage. The leak occurred because the maintenance on the air conditioner unit on top of the roof was not properly maintained. So we had a damage. So ultimately, I think the responsibility for that damage would have come to the county. It was a maintenance issue on top of the roof. Didn't have anything to do with anything else. Now, with the tenant situation and the circumstances as they were, said it's not worth.
Yeah. It's not, that wasn't
No.
that big a deal. I was just wondering if there was a bigger deal and then they come back at the county and said, oh, we think you're responsible. That's where we go back to the money's like, okay, you're all getting rent free.
Mm-hmm.
So then I guess that would be a conversation item, but I guess the way I look at it, it's just practical. That where you're getting the rent for it, then I guess the way it's all set up, it's a little bit in the gray area.
Yeah.
But it could happen again.
Sure, it could.
So-
It could. But we do have the general liability insurance.
Right, you all do have that
We do
through
have
the
that.
BDC.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I think the idea of somebody said something about rent being free. I'm not sure.
No.
The county ain't getting nothing out of it, so
Oh.
evidently it's free.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Well, I don't know what you mean now.
Well, the
The
county ain't
county-
getting nothing out of the
Greg,
BDC.
Greg, Michelle's next. She asked.
I didn't know she was number three. Okay, sorry
Yeah.
about that, Bob.
But
Have
yeah,
you finished, Timmy?
okay. So I guess the last question is, okay, you pay for the utilities and stuff, administration fees. Is there any monies going to that? Maybe I'd missed that
No,
in there.
when we had a full-time manager over there, or actually a part-time manager, we haven't had a full-time manager in a couple of years. But when COVID pretty much shut things down, Dale significantly reduced his hours to about 10, 12 hours a week. He came in just to make sure, take care of the tenant issues or concerns. So very little time there in terms of administration, but we budgeted 15,000.
So you budget 15,000.
Right.
There. So you don't have anybody right now.
We have Kate Irwin, who is
Kate
providing that on-site service, and then the board. I serve as kind of a representative for the board. I'm over there on a fairly regular basis, and if Kate's got an issue going on, I try to help and do what I can do.
Basically, 36. So I was just trying to get a handle on like the cost of what you're using out of your budget.
And the $10,000 that the county contributes each year, that basically is to share the receptionist duties up front. They split that with the community college, and so that's what those funds are designated for, is to help with on the receptionist duties.
I've stuck up enough time. Go ahead.
Michelle?
I'd just like to say that I've sat on this board since I was elected, and it's a very professionally run board, and to make a statement like we could go to Vegas and spend all that money, Brian, Ken, everybody on the board is very professional, and every dime is accounted for. And I would just like to say that, the people that are in here now, I'm gonna say 90% of these people that are renting, like he said, they would be at home. They would not be coming to town every day, buying groceries, gas, food, eating at restaurants, networking with these other people. This is economic development folded into economic development. And, I don't feel like that they are taking away from anybody who has a space for lease, because they wouldn't lease that space because, they're paying for, I don't know if you all have been over to the BDC, but each one of those offices are in one small little room. That's what they're operating out of, is a room. And to pay $150 a month for a room, like he said, that's competitive to the other square footage that is around town, or even in, Surrey or Wilkes County. So, you know, it's, to say that this is not a valuable asset to our county, I mean, gosh, I just don't know how it could be much more of a valuable asset than what it is. You know, we've got Wills Community College in one part of it, the library in another part, and then all these businesses in this other part. And, you know, also Bobby mentioned that I am on the Social Services Board. And I have spoken to Lisa Osborne, who is the Social Services Director. She was very, very concerned about the possibility of having to move over there. And she cited these concerns to me. She said, you know, security concerns, irate clients potentially roaming around the entire building amongst the college students. The offices are very segregated at the BDC, which would not allow the other workers to know when someone might be in trouble with a client. Parking is a concern. There's not enough parking for DSS staff, plus clients, plus college staff, plus students, plus library patrons. Confidentiality. Clients would roam the hallways, which is a huge concern for confidentiality. Financially, the county's current guesstimated income from business is approximately $77,000 per month. That's $200 a month for 32 offices. That would go away. The county currently pays 50% rent for the current DSS building plus hospital building, which we just signed another lease in 2018 on that building with Bill Blevins. So, you know, that just, we would receive no reimbursement for utilities, all expense to the county. The overall building, little to no room for growth, no way to separate the agency from the college unless locked doors were installed or walls built within the building. College personnel must have offices in the BDC as well as the library. The DMV office is also located there. Would those three entities be required to leave as well? Must have a room large enough for all agency personnel to meet in. Must have an empty office for our social worker for the blind. Building owners are currently responsible for repairs to the building. County maintenance picks up trash, cleans floor, and cleans the bathrooms. But overall, there's just no room for growth, and with the current state of Medicaid being in, it looks like we're going down a certain path for Medicaid reform. We're gonna have to hire at least 2 more positions. Plus, you have to have the empty office for the social worker for the blind, the auditors, the state reps, VIA. It's just not enough room to do what they need. That's it.
Greg?
The biggest I'm getting at, BDC is putting nothing back into the county budget. We're keeping the building up. That's why it's coming from free. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
So would it be fair for the BDC to pay the county some back?
That's a decision I think the county board needs to think about. At this time, when it was originally conceived, 4 years ago, as I say, Greg, it's gone through a number of iterations since then. And so if the county needed to rethink that, absolutely. And I will restate what I said earlier. If the county commissioners have a higher and better use for that building or a different arrangement for that building, I think all I would request is that you do a factual, fair evaluation so that you know what you're really talking about. Don't just take numbers that's pulled out of the sky. Look at the real numbers. What's the real number that goes into the equation? Factor it out. And if you come out on the bottom line where it's advantageous to this county and the citizens, then that's exactly what you should do. But if you come out on the bottom line and it's a $3,000 difference or a $10,000 difference and you're going to displace 25 workers over there, I think that's worth your consideration as well. So just look at the whole thing and be fair about your evaluation.
The whole thing, but we got 10,000 people in the county is paying taxes. You know, they don't want to see us to say, y'all go rent this building for free and the county get nothing back.
Well,
Is that not a point?
that building was purchased with $500,000 of federal money.
That was
Yeah,
still tax money.
I don't think the county wants to pay that back to the feds.
Well, that's still tax money, right?
It is.
Okay. But, you know, county taxpayers sitting there looking at this building sitting up there, we ain't getting nothing back in it.
We get sales tax, and we get the opportunity for those people to be in town and do business, which supports our community and every sales tax dollar reduces the burden on property tax.
Is all these people on this list still up there?
I don't know what list you got. John's got the list of people who's up there.
Is every one of these still on it?
You finished?
I'm trying to talk, Bob.
Go ahead.
That is the information that Brian provided the county from the questions that I asked him.
I didn't know, you said Dale moved out, and then it says Dale's been there 10 months. I didn't
Well,
know, he rented another office?
He did. He rented another
You
office.
go on his website, he charges $1,000 a day, and we rents it for $150 a month.
Yeah, it's about as big as the bathroom back there.
I mean,
But he wouldn't have to rent it. He could be at home just as well. He spoke to Bobby the other day when we made the visit around up there, and he said, I could be at home just as well, but I'd rather spend the $150. And he enjoys the socialization and the interaction he has with the people up there.
that's fine, but that 150, at least let it come back to the county. A little something come back. I mean, we ain't getting nothing back, other than them being up there.
Do you want 150? Is that, we
150.
can make a deal right now.
I mean, do something, you know, show something so the taxpayers see they're getting something.
I'm with you. $150 sounds like a deal to me.
At time, you've got to quit bleeding the taxpayers of the county, Brian.
I don't believe there's any bleeding going on with the BDC. But again, that's a decision that you folks need to make. I would just say use actual numbers. And I think your county manager and your finance officer can generate a report for you that would show you an actual breakdown of what those real numbers are, and that's what you ought to be looking at. I support that.
Anything else, Greg?
All right, the moment.
I got one thing.
John?
Okay, whenever I mentioned the utilities, 20,000, I was going by your 2018 Form 990 under Section O, utilities, $20,725.
That includes internet and solid waste and water from the town.
And I admire your ability to take us off subject. No one has said that we're kicking anybody out or we're going to move anybody in. I was asked an example, what if? Well, that is a what if. The basic question that we have that we're discussing is, do we continue with this contract or not? If we don't, then the county manager has got to assure us that he can take responsibility for the building. And we can keep these people in at the current rent. That is a discussion that we would have. Right now, we're discussing, will we continue the contract or will we not? If we continue the contract, if the other commissioners wish, I suggest that we rewrite the contract taking out economic development. I mean, how many entities are we going to have for economic development under that umbrella? We have the Chamber of Economic Development that is supposed to be doing that function, and they are going to give them a grant and let them assume that responsibility based on the minutes that you have in your possession. That's the only thing that I'm looking at. Now, the county, if we assume it, keep going. I would recommend that we keep going the way that we are going with the rent, utilities. Look at it if they need to be adjusted. If you'll notice, some of the newer tenants are paying $285. They're not paying $150. Those that are grandfathered, we can look at them. That's a discussion we have to make after we make the decision, are we going to renew this contract? One thing that really sticks in my mind, though, is where's that money out there?
It's in the bank, John.
It's in the bank, but it's not being utilized. Other than giving a grant to the Chamber of Economic Development for assuming the responsibility for economic development. And I'm referring to your Form 990, end of year in 2021, so it's higher now, we hope, $157,236. Now, I'm being facetious whenever I say they can. I mean, they're a board, they're 501c3. We can't tell them what to do. But that is as I said, is facetious or far out. I would not even thinking that they would do that. But, You know, that's it. That money stays there. We cancel the contract, they still got that money in the bank. What they're gonna do with it, their board will decide. We have no influence on it. Now, I do have a question, I've asked a question with the county manager. Is that something that you would be willing to assume if we decide not to renew the contract?
The way that I would answer that goes back to some of the original comments that have been said earlier. I now have a copy of the agreement, which I think everyone probably does as well. Now, everyone knows me by now, so there's no hidden agendas here. To point out, to clarify, the numbers that I referenced specifically related around the DSS portion of the conversation, which I believe, Commissioner Luffman, you verified, because I had conversations with Lisa also. So in reference to fact checking on that component, I think those facts have been checked. Those are the numbers I referenced for the record, and I believe they're accurate. Secondly, in the agreement, there was a comment made about what the county's $10,000 goes for. And if I believe correctly, it was to help out with the front desk and that type of arrangement.
That's what it's been, it wasn't necessarily specified, it wasn't in any, but that's generally what it's been used for, is to pay that share of the.
That's not what the agreement says that it's used for. The agreement starts at the bottom of page 1 under performance. And it says the operator shall continuously strive to incubate, create, support businesses within Alleghany County. Okay. This shall be accomplished by offering a variety of services to tenants and local businesses. These services shall include, and there's a number of bullet points, and I'll go through those as quickly as I can. 1, management of the facility. 2, marketing and business startup consultation services. 3, training and public education programs. 4, provide leased office space and tenant services. 5, provide facilities for meetings and special events. 6, support of county, town, and community programs and events as needed. 7, representation of town and county at state and regional programs and events as needed. 8, share BDC van for transportation to county and town activities. 9, support and promote of economic development and business activity within Alleghany County. And 10, operator manager being responsible for economic development activities and serving as director of Alleghany County Economic Development Corporation located in Alleghany County. And then the paragraph directly below it, in return for these services stated above, the owner shall allow the operator to retain lease payments to cover operating expenses. The operator shall provide reports, i.e. financial and operational, to the owner as deemed necessary by the owner. And then it has a parentheses note, the owner may provide additional funds at its discretion to assist the operator in performing these services, along with any other services deemed necessary. The operator is responsible to perform the services indicated in this agreement regardless if the owner does or does not provide additional funding. Last sentence. In addition, the owner agrees to compensate the operator the amount of $15,250 for the period of June 1, 2018 to May 31, 2019, and $10,000 annually thereafter. So what I am saying, it's not a me versus anybody here in this room. It's me reading exactly what it says. This does not say anything about the front desk. It's an assumption. It's been used that way. I get that. But it does not reference that in what we are paying our $10,000 for. That's what I would point out. Commissioner John Irwin, you asked me a question. I'm not avoiding that question. What I'm saying, this agreement also says, and it talks about it under the term, and if you look at the last sentence under the term on page 1, it says to exercise this option to extend Operator must give owner written notice of intention to do so at least 90 days prior to the expiration of the current term. Well, the expiration of the current term is October 1 of 2023. We're not at that 90-day window yet. So I can honestly say I have not seen an option to extend, provided. I have not, until today, had the opportunity to dig and delve into this. When we set this meeting up, I communicated openly that I was not here at the creation. I was here after the fact, and I have been here the last 3 years as the operation continued. If this is something that the county wants to direct me into looking into, I'd be glad to do that. I'm not going to tell you today, yes, that's what we need to do. I'm not going to tell you today, no, that's what we need to do. What I'm going to tell you is if this board directs me to look at that, I will do that and report back to you in a timely fashion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this is the reason why I wanted the work session, so that we could have adequate time to think about this, and then I would suggest that no decision be made until we have a public meeting. Let the public become involved with this also. Now, we have 90 days to make a final decision. We may need to notify with 90 days, correct?
Operator must give owner 90 days prior to the expiration of the current. Now, they could give it to us today. They could give it to us day 90 before October 1 of 2023. But operator must give notice.
We must make a decision before that time. And I felt that we should start discussing this at least 6 months out before we make that decision, or make a decision in a timely fashion. If the county board, if we vote not to renew that contract, they have, as a corporation, they have things that they're going to need to do. So, but I'm not asking for a decision now. I am just bringing things out. The question is, one, will we renew that contract? If we are going to renew it, are we going to rewrite the contract, taking out economic development or other areas? We need to discuss that. If we decide that we are not going to renew the contract, we have to ask the county manager his idea about running it. Can he run it? Will it be an additional liability on him? This is the simple questions I'm asking.
Mr. Chair, I have one more question for Brian. Has your board considered, like for instance, these tenants been in there for many years, or more than 1 or 2 years? Have they considered doing something like Commissioner Irwin's talking about, like, because the way it was started out, like they get a start and then they get their name and started for a little while, and then they're sort of in some way try to push out into the community to rent somewhere else.
Yes, we have had that discussion, and going back, in fact, Dale was looking into that before he retired from his position over there. And then after the director left, those discussions just haven't really gone anywhere. But yes, we had recognized that it's probably needed to be looked at. And since Dale left, we just haven't had any staff or anybody to do that. But back to Commissioner John's, I agree with what he has laid out. I think it's a very fair observation the county ought to make. You need to look at the numbers and address everything that he suggested there. I think that's the right approach. You need to decide if there's a better, higher use for that facility and can be done in a better way. So.
Well, and of course, I'm just one person, but what I would like to see, if, to pick up that conversation again, to start seeing, if it does go and you all, we sign that lease again, maybe some discussions about, trying to give these tenants time to get footing and then raising their rate and I don't know how you can't push them out, I guess, but I guess
Well,
my thought.
most of the leases are for 1 year. So,
Right.
and they began at different points in time. So they would be rolling off, on some basis that certainly you could manage that. One thing I'll mention that, on regarding the board, just within the last couple of months, now the BDC board originally consisted of the president of the community college, superintendent of schools, Skyline Telephone representation, Blue Ridge Electric representation. Those folks have now moved over to the chamber board. And back to John's point about the economic development, we have been trying now for a couple of years as the Chamber of Economic Development to reduce the confusion about who's doing economic development. We've been trying. It's been a challenge. We haven't had a lot of support to help the Alleghany Chamber of Economic Development get where we wanted to be. But that being said, the BDC at one time was performing those duties, and as the manager outlined in what that contract was written at a point in time when the current manager at that time thought that was going to be the economic development path that the county used. And so, things have changed and evolved, and I think it's time to take a fresh look at where things are, and if it's a better way to get it done, then
I think
let's
it's
do it.
worth having a conversation.
Sure.
I don't know if there's monies left, even what Greg was talking about, the money, sharing the, some of that stuff, but
I
it's
think
definitely worth having conversations
that
about.
could certainly be put into the revised agreement, and at this point, the current board is Ken Richardson continues to serve as chair. I'm the vice chair. Ryan Wilmoth, the town manager, is the secretary treasurer, and Michelle serves. Those are the 4 permanent members. And then we invited 3 tenant members, because as those other members moved off the BDC board and we were more engaged over there with really building management is what that board serves the purpose for now. So we invited Wanda Beck from the community college. She is the largest tenant in the building, and so Wanda Beck, Kate Irwin, and Dale Cavney, and we invited Dale because of his prior experience of managing the facility for a number of years. So that's the current board, 7 members on that board, and I think it would be, that board would need to consider what's been discussed today and what may be discussed between now and the end of the year to determine if there's even a desire to continue that arrangement. And depending on what the county comes back with and what their thinking is, it may be that that's not a something that wants to be pursued.
I agree that it is, and we're getting close on time, aren't we?
No. You got plenty. Go ahead if you got another
but-
question.
Half an hour.
I agree that I think it's evolved. I remember when the textile deal was pretty much, people lost their jobs pretty fast around here, and I understand. And actually, when it was all first set up, it was it was for that purpose. It's probably giving people opportunity to come in and start some startup businesses.
Exactly.
And so I know, and I agree that it's, I don't know that it's outlived its day. It just may need to be reshaped. That's what I think.
I agree.
Greg, go ahead.
Only other thing I got to say on it, I'm like Timmy on it. Somebody needs to give back to the county here instead of us footing all the bill on the building, all that part. And I'm sure the taxpayer would be happy with that, getting a little bit back. All they're seeing, these people up there paying this rent, and we get another income back in.
Ben?
Michelle?
You have to understand too that, this has, like we've discussed, been an evolution. And just recently has this situation become a popular place to be. And, there for a while it was losing money. And it had to have the help of the county. But just recently, in the past couple of years, every office has been filled up. And I do think it's time to look at that. But in the past, it was just not feasible because it was a losing proposition. But now it's not a losing proposition.
We've discussed this a lot today, and I think all of us have a different understanding of what went on. And like Brian and John said, this lease agreement is a living document. It can be changed. Times change, situations change, and this contract may need to be tweaked some, may need to be changed. I think the BDC board needs to be firm in their commitment that they want to stay. Commissioners need to be firm in our commitment what we see is the future of BDC. Look back at the history. There's been a lot of businesses that started at BDC that have flourished, and there's been a lot that just didn't flourish. But that was the purpose at that time, was to give these people a head start, how to operate, how to manage their money. And I think that part has been partially successful, because we do see some big businesses in this county that came from that. So, and I love this discussion. This is the information that we need to be able to make a decision. Instead of something coming to the board and asking for a decision without any background, without being able to check things. And I think you'll see that today in some of the changes in the way we do the agenda. But I think that it's time for Michael to sit down. It's time for Heather to look at the contract. We need to just get input from Michael as to what he thinks it could be, and then input from all 5 commissioners as to what they foresee as the BDC. But one thing I would suggest, if you had a question today that was not answered, or if you think of a question tonight, tomorrow, or something, put that question in writing. John asked for these questions in writing and gave Brian a couple weeks to do his research. I think we should do the same thing to Brian. Give him time to answer. If you still have some questions, just put them in writing, send them to Drew, and she'll pass those on to Brian. I think that's the only fair thing to do. And it's adds some clarity to what we're reading and what we're talking about. John, do you have anything else to add?
No, other than this is the process. We need to start early. We need to cuss and discuss. If there's miscommunication, we need to get it out. The failure to communicate causes a whole lot of problems. I will tell you that the BDC reduction in the number of board members, I support, I salute that. It's something that had to be done. I like having tenants on that board so that they can input to the board. Just like I said, the basic question is, we got off on a lot of tangents, but the basic question is, do we renew the contract? And if we renew, do we need to take some things out? To me, having economic development in that contract is not fair to the BDC. I mean, that's bottom line. I've said it before. I've said it prior to this meeting many times. It's simply not fair to them. It gives me an argument against them. So take it away. Take that responsibility off of them. And we can look at this, and I'm sure that we can come to an agreement and hopefully modify things so that it's to the mutual satisfaction of both parties. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Brian.
I agree. I think John's right. I mean, the reference is in there, and we have officially and done that. I mean, we have a service agreement between the BDC and the chamber to do those duties that are outlined there. And we are providing those services that were outlined there, for the most part, working primarily with business, with the Wilkes Community College Small Business Center, also working with the Western BizWorks. So we do offer referral services and support to those people if we have those kinds of questions and those inquiries. So we're happy to do that. Let's see, John, there was one other point you made I wanted to. What's the first point you made there?
Writing a contract? Or-
Well, yeah, no, we touched on that. There was one other point, but anyway, I think we're on the right track to revise the contract, make it up to date for what services are being done today and what's appropriate. And yeah,
Michelle, any comments? Timmy, another comment? Greg? Michael? Heather? Anything else, Brian?
oh, thank you, Bob.
I just would ask for those further back, follow-up questions to be, sent to Drew. If there's no other business, we have another meeting that will start at 5:30. So I'll call this part of our, work session, closed. Thank you.
Good points, Brian. Good clarification, too.
He's
Basically there, but not there.
got hospice is there, and my daughter's there, but I told Michelle that I might have to leave, and,
Oh, Bobby.
she's in what they call the second stage of, yesterday, she was a different person. She could almost stand up. Today, it took 3 of us to get her up. And,
But she's home, right? She's at home.
yeah, we told her we'd keep her at home.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes those spurts are real. All of a sudden, they're all great, and then next thing you know, they're.
When the hospice nurse came today, I said, I didn't recognize her yesterday. I mean, she ate 2 spoonsful of some Jell-O, and hey, she can't even stand up. Can't even sit up.
Is she allergic?
Yeah, she wants to live till the Super Bowl.
That's her goal.
Oh, she's in love with this Kansas City Chief quarterback.
We'll hope she can make it then.
Mahomes.
Yeah.
Yeah, my son's here. He's getting a TV put in her room. And, but Kansas City. Why'd she pick Kansas City?
Yeah.
He's cute.
He's a good quarterback.
Yeah.
He doesn't do anything for me. So we got a few minutes.
Yeah, I'll run out here. You and I cooked up.
Got anybody for the invocation?
No.
Got something for remembrance.
I'm gonna assume from this that, you know, we have gone too quick. Yeah, because they're not even gonna, I mean, they're gonna get together until the end of March to come up with their funding and how they wanna hit.
I think you're out high and dry. I might get up front of them in a minute.
We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, Monday, February the 6th. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll have a moment of reflection. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Michelle will give us a moment of reflection.
Say that we're thankful today that we can all come together with the Board of Education, with the commissioners, and thankful that we can come together as a community and talk about this this bright new project that's upon us. Thank you.
Be seated.
Mr. Chair, we need to call our meeting to order.
Thank you. We need to approve the agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand. Need approval of the motion on the minutes from January the 17th and January the 30th. I need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your hand. Thank you. I'd like to welcome Alleghany County Board of Education. We're going to get an update on this new expenditure. I think Dr. Beasley's still smiling from the good news from the state, from DPI, of $47 million. And I would certainly hope that that will carry us into the future with a great, great school system. So with that being said, I will turn it over to Dr. Beasley.
All right, I'm gonna stand up and talk a little bit, if that's all right.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, I will. I'll head up
Thank
that
you.
way. First of all, thanks for having us tonight, and I know we had some changes in our with our commissioners and our board. One of our board members has been prayers, if you don't mind. But anyway, yeah, we did receive a $47 million grant a few months ago, and with that project, we are trying to build a new high school, and so we are. I know we met back in October, and we talked about that, and we talked a little bit about the auditorium. So Sid's going to give us an update on the auditorium here in a little bit about some costs that we may need to look at for the roof and heating and air and getting the seating done and maybe put in a drop ceiling in there. But I got a couple of I've got a new rendering, and we made copies of that and gave it to you. Can you pull that up, Drew? Yeah. So. This is a little bit more, the one we had before was a little bigger. It wasn't really drawn to scale, but this one is a little bit more drawn to scale. And so just wanted to kind of give you a highlight of what it's going to look like. And we met with the architects again last week and have got a construction drawing basically done. We're about 90% ready to go to blueprints with it. And so anyway, we've got a couple of meetings coming up about the third week of February, because we need to meet with child nutrition and start designing the cafeteria, what it's going to look like. We need to talk with some EC teachers, science labs, and get those things started. But this kind of just gives you an update of what it's going to look like. And then I asked the architect to maybe give me a couple of renderings of what it's going to look like when we come in the front entrance right here. So I've got a couple of those too. I hope you've got those in front of you, but can you pull that one up, Drew? Or I think there's two of them. So that kind of gives you an idea of looking out of the front entrance. This area over here, that's all right. This area over here on the right, yep, that's a student center. That's the media center, a technology center, and the new cafeteria will be on the left. That next. When you come in the front entrance, that's as far as you can get in this building. You can't go anywhere until you are buzzed in or brought in by somebody in administration. So that's just, I just want to kind of give you an idea of what it may look like inside just in the front entrance, you know. We'll as we get a little closer to finishing up the blueprints, we'll get some 3D drawings done. I'll come share those with you, or you guys can come and visit up there and we'll share them together. But they just did a project in Scotland County. You know, we've been trying to figure out the cost. That building down there was going to be about $260 a square foot. So that puts us in range of what we're looking at for this. So we hope that's the way things work out. We don't know until we get it bid. We don't have bids. We can't do bids until we get the blueprints done. But I just wanted to come and share that with you, give you an idea of where we're at, and let you know. Like I said, we're about 90% done with the construction prints, and once we get those done and get it finalized, we'll go to blueprint on that. So, any questions or comments or?
Any questions right now? No, go ahead.
All right. So, Sid, I'm going to turn it over. You know, we talked a little bit about the auditorium. The auditorium's got some issues, and as we said at our last joint meeting, if we don't do something up there, you know, that building's probably going to come down in the next 5 to 10 years, which would be a shame to lose that auditorium in this county. But so Sid has been talking to some heating and air folks, the roof. I think he's got some stuff on the seating. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Carrier. So thank you.
Mr. Beasley. As Mr. Beasley said, we discussed a few things at our last joint meeting, and those things that we discussed was roof, new heat and air, maybe some drop ceiling. That ceiling's so high, so we talked about maybe lowering it some, and of course the seating. With the roof, price come in at $164,800. That's a TPO membrane roof with a 20-year warranty. The HVAC, which would probably go with heat pumps, and that'd be dual units, that's coming in at $250,000. Auditorium ceiling, which was recommended, was an acoustical wood system. It'll kind of lay in like a drop ceiling, but it'll have the wood look and feel to it. And it's going to come in at $180,000. Auditorium seating, if we go with the fabric seats that's kind of there now, part of them, you're looking at $200,000. And if we decide to go with plastic seats, that drops it down to $120,000. So if you total all that up, you're at $914,800.
I want to say on the seating, I'm sorry.
You've got some money, actually.
Yeah, the Friends of the Auditorium raised funds for the seating, and at that time probably would have done that, but that's been a few years ago. But we have $55,000 sitting in a line right now in our budget for that seating that we just sitting on. We're not going to spend it on anything else. That's what it was designated for. That's what the donors designated it for. It's been real specific about that, and so that 55 can only be spent on that. So it would drop the cost down around 55. And I'll say this too, Right now, we're not currently really able to use that auditorium. We don't have any heat in it. We can't cut the radiators on,
Yeah.
with as many leaks as we have.
We struggled during Christmas, during that cold weather. We struggled to keep the heat on during that time. And honestly, if it's not being used, the heat's off. And we've repiped a bunch and spent a bunch on that old furnace. So unless it's being used, it's not being run. Any questions?
Yeah, I've got one on the seating. Is that done by the state prisoners or is that a private?
That's an option. This is just a budget price from Pinnacle Architect, and we could go different routes on that. It basically just depends on what style you want, and yeah, we can get pricing from different places.
The cloth seating that's there now, I believe, didn't that come from the state prison system?
May have. It's been a while, I think.
It's been over 20 years. It's been over 20
it's been
years
a while.
ago. Yeah,
It's been a good while.
they're in good
That
shape,
was
but
just basically material.
I think they just covered what was there, if I'm not mistaken, the wooden seats, and they just covered them in fabric.
Right. But there was no labor charge, was there?
That's been so long ago, I can't remember, but that does sound right. They do a lot of work like that. They do.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions on any of that?
Thank you.
again, you know, we want to thank you for just letting us come and share with you tonight. And, you know, we need to keep this communication going, keep these quarterly meetings going. I want to keep you updated as far as where we're at on this construction project. And, you know, it's been a slow process right now, but we do hope to, I'd love to have the blueprints finished sometime in March. And if we do that, we can send it out for bid, and if things work out,